Hey, Motorman here, and I'm going to show you some of the changes I've made on my Lowrider S. It's just been a couple of weeks, but I've already added a few things, and at the end of this video I'm going to show you how I painted the fairing, and so that you could do the exact same thing. Alright, here's the bike. We'll start from the front. That's the Memphis Shades fairing. Looks really good on this bike. In fact, I think it looks better in white on a white bike than it did in black on a black bike, if that makes any sense. And yes, I painted the whole thing. Like I said, at the end of the video I'll show you how I did it. It's a perfect match. I'll tell you also, or I'll put a link below to where you can get the paint to match your motorcycle, so you could do the same thing. It's not brain surgery, just takes some prep work. Word about the Memphis Shades fairing, it's called quick release. Yeah, well, it's a very finicky thing. To get it to latch correctly is not easy. It took at least an hour screwing around with it, moving the latches up and down to actually get it to work. So yeah, if you take it off and then put it back on, yeah, you're gonna have some problems, especially if you do it a lot. So I've added, starting up front here, this is the Harley Davidson flat bar, which is you would think very easy to install. There's just 3 bolts, 2 of which are fairly easy to get to, one of which in the middle, yeah, it's awful tough. It takes a lot of patience, but it looks good. And I've got a CC Rider seat, because the stock seat on this motorcycle, yeah, let's just say it's not the best for long-term comfort. Now, I haven't ridden the bike for any distance since putting that seat on, so I can't give you a really good review of it. I got this seat because I like the way it slopes and sort of fits the rear fender, versus a step-up type seat that you can get on, well, there's several manufacturers. Plus, this one is $260 versus over $500 for most of the others. And of course, I've got the tab mufflers on it, which sound really good. And that's it so far. But anyway, I'm going to take it for a ride now and tell you what I think of this bike. So let's start with the seat height. It's a low seat height. I believe it's about 27 inches. That means just about any size rider can just about flat foot this bike. That's with the stock seat. And even with the CC Rider seat that I added, it's about the same as far as the seat height on it. This is a 679-pound motorcycle. So if you're moving up from, let's say, a mid-weight bike, 500 or 600 pounds, it's not going to be a world of a difference as far as the way the bike handles or the way the bike feels when you're backing it up. Since it's got a low seat height, it's pretty easy for most people to back this motorcycle up. Also, with the Softail models, and this is true of all the Softails, you're going to feel a little bit more of the motor. In other words, it's going to feel more like what people traditionally think of as a Harley Davidson motorcycle. It's not dead smooth. It does have 2 balance shafts, and the vibration that you get through the hand grips, or the foot pegs, or even the seat is very slight, and it's low frequency vibrations. But it is not as smooth as any of the Harley Davidson touring models. So if smoothness is a thing for you, you know, you're probably better off with one of the touring bikes. Now, of course, with this bike, you've got all kinds of power. It's the 117. I believe it's 95 or 100 horsepower, and that means it's a fast bike. It's got torque galore. This bike really moves. So if you're going to take a 1,000-mile trip, yeah, this is a fine bike for that. Of course, you're going to have to add some saddlebags or some way of carrying your belongings with you, but it is more than capable. It's not just an around-town bike. It's more than capable of any kind of highway trips. Being that it's quite a bit lighter than the touring bikes, just a little push on the handlebars as you're coming around a curve, the bike reacts immediately. There's no hesitation there. You've got a 32-degree lean angle on this motorcycle, which is the same as the touring bikes. However, the pegs fold up quite easily, so I'm guessing if you really push the bike, let the pegs fold up as you're coming around a curve, you could probably get up to about 35-degree lean angle, and that's pretty good for a cruiser-type motorcycle. I should also mention that since they moved the gauges up from the console where You really couldn't see them unless you looked down, and that could be a problem when you got a full face helmet on. You actually couldn't see the gauges. So now they've moved it up, and your main gauge there is the tachometer, and you could see underneath your miles per hour very easily. I really like this setup. It's just a lot more convenient and safer than it was in the pre-22 models. When you open up the throttle on this bike, it really takes off, and that's the most fun part of this. Here in Florida, where we have very few winding roads, you can't take advantage of the excellent handling as much as you could, in North Georgia or the Smoky Mountains or any place else in the country where you have a good choice of winding roads. But it is a fun motorcycle to ride. It's got the Harley-Davidson character. You feel it, you enjoy it, and it's just a great bike, which I highly recommend. Now let's switch over to how I painted the fairing and why it looks so good. Alright, here's the Memphis Shades fairing. Normally they come in black, and it's a glossy black. You don't have to do anything to it if your bike happens to be black. But if you want to paint it a different color, as I did back in 2021, I had painted this fairing a crimson. So I was advised to first scuff up the finish, then prime it, scuff it again, and then put on the color, the white color, because you don't want the red bleeding through. Easy enough. Get a scuff pad and just make sure there's no gloss left before you start painting. For the white sand pearl, it's actually 3 different paints that you're going to need. The base coat, and then the pearl coat, and then the clear coat. So you want to stay about 6 inches from the product, making sure when you press the little tab to start spraying that you do that off the whatever project that you're painting. You don't want to start spraying right on the project. Once the base coat is finished, like I said, 3 coats, I'm going to go with the pearl. I'm going to use also 3 coats of the pearl. Make sure you shake the cans really good. In fact, I left them out in the sun, and it just mixes a lot better when the can is warm. You could also put a heat gun on it. So we got 3 coats of base, 3 coats of pearl, and next will be the clear coat. If you want a quality job, you have to use quality paint, and that's what you get from USASpecialistPaints.com. It's just so far superior to anything you could buy at the automotive store or Walmart, etc., and it's going to last and look just like a factory finish. After applying 3 coats of clear, in other words, I pretty much used up the can, you got a pretty nice shine. There are some imperfections in it prior to the cut and buff, but a lot of people, this may be just fine for you. You could leave it as is. If you've never wet sanded or buffed, you could leave it just like this, but I want as close to a factory finish as possible. So I'm going to take some 2000 grit that'll get rid of any imperfections, dull it up with the 2000 grit, and then polish it out. After the wet sanding, it's time to what we call cut and buff. I'm going to be using a light compound and a orange pad, not too aggressive pad, and the idea is to get the shine back to it. I'm going to be using a Groit's correction cream, but you can use McGuire's or any of the others will work just as well. After the compound phase, it's now time to use a polish that's just going to bring out the finish, and you want to get it, at least I do, I want to get it as close to factory as possible, so I'm using that black pad and some McGuire's polish, and I'll go over the whole thing until I'm satisfied with the shine. And here, of course, is the finished product. Looking really good. Pretty close to the factory finish, factory shine. I might be able to get a little bit more gloss out of it with a couple of more, half hour or so of polishing. But as compared to the fender, you can see it's pretty close. I'm pretty much satisfied with this. So anybody could do this. It just takes the steps that I've showed you, and be patient. Take your time, and you can get just as good a finish as you can with a spray gun with spray cans, as long as you use, of course, quality paint. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe. Let me know if you enjoyed this segment.